In a recent episode of The Life of a Servant, we talked about the importance of protecting Canada's freshwater resources. In this episode, we take another trip back to the year 2001 to hear a speech delivered by Dennis Mills in Canada's House of Commons about food security. On March 20, 2001, Dennis was serving as the Member of Parliament for Toronto-Danforth. As a city MP, Dennis and his team led several efforts to educate and raise awareness among Canada's urban population about the value of Canada's family farms. This speech provides listeners with an audio glimpse to the nation's boardroom nearly a quarter of a century ago, and how members of Parliament from all political parties were working towards supporting and bolstering Canada's family farms, protecting our national food supply, and finding doable ways to raise our national understanding and appreciation of how our food moves from the fields to our tables. 24 years later, issues around food prices and how Canada's food chain works really have taken a front seat on the tables, in the wallets, and in the hearts and minds of Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, right at the outset, I believe that all of us in this House have done a mediocre job of educating the consumers as to what is going on with agriculture in this country. I think few of our consumers or few of our urban people realize that the average family farm income in this country is under $20,000 a year. I feel few consumers realize that the average age of a person farming today is close to 60 years old. And quite frankly, I wonder, or I'm not surprised, that more and more younger people who are living on farms are not inspired to continue in the footsteps of their mothers and fathers and maintain their farms. And I think to really shift the emphasis, we have to go back to the consumer. Now, isn't it amazing, Mr. Speaker, that in my city, the city of Toronto, 1 in 6 jobs depends on the food business? You know, when we sit around in this House in Commons and we press ministers, finance minister, prime minister for support and resources that are needed in the automotive sector, in the aerospace sector, or any other sector for that matter, tourism, we always link it to jobs. Well, it seems that most of the debates in agriculture, Mr. Speaker, in this House focus just on the 270,000 farmers in Canada. Well, I believe that we should start including in this debate and in the rationale the fact that 1 in 6 jobs in urban areas depend on the agri-food business. And those businesses themselves, Mr. Speaker, whether it be the retail business, I mean, you know, you just have to open up any business section of any newspaper in Canada and you can see the massive profits that food retailers are making in this country.
Exactly.
See the massive profits, Mr. Speaker, that the food processors are making. Right. And then when we come down to the producers, we see this incredible disparity. Exactly. I mean, Mr. Speaker, it just doesn't, I can't figure this out, how we can have the producers who are supplying the processors and the retailers, how is it in this chain that the producer is getting screwed right in front of us? How is this happening? And why isn't this being challenged? Well, Mr. Speaker, I think that the numbers that we're using are wrong, too. We talk, for example, of numbers of $500 million of new money going to farmers in this country. Well, the poor person, Mr. Speaker, that's making $25,000 or $30,000 a year, or for that matter, even $100,000 a year, they say, boy, that seems like a lot of money going to 270,000 farmers. Well, the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we, the consumers, we, the urbanites, are the net beneficiaries of the work of those farmers. We have the cheapest food policy of any country in the G7, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that probably over 90% of Canadians are not knowledgeable about this fact. We have a cheap food policy in this country. In other words, it's not the farmers that are getting the subsidy. We in urban areas, when we go into the Loblaws or the Sobeys or Dominion or whatever it is, we get access to high-quality food at very cheap prices. And so we are the ones that are in the end the net beneficiaries of any monies that are going out to farmers. Now, Mr. Speaker, the motion today is asking for another large sum of money, which, by the way, I support the principle of whatever the amount of money it is, whether it's $400 million or $600 million, Mr. Speaker. The spirit of that motion I support. But I think, Mr. Speaker, what we have to do is start educating the urban person this way. This is about food sovereignty, this issue. And would you spend, as for your family, $1 a week for everybody in an average family, $1 a week, say the average family is 4, that's $4 a week for a year to maintain the family farm system of Canada. Would you spend $200 a week for your family to have a safe, secure supply of food in this country and we maintain food sovereignty? And Mr. Speaker, I think that Canadians, when they understand that this is what the cost is to them on an individual basis, approximately $50 a person over a year, I think that if people started linking into this issue on a personal basis and on what it means to them in terms of added cost, okay, I think that the energy and the reason behind rebuilding the agriculture and agri-food sector in this country would be greatly enhanced. Mr. Speaker, let me say to all the farmers that are listening in this country that I have no doubt about your need for the dollars that were put on the table. In fact, as a city MP, I could never understand how this number was arrived at. And March 13th, I received this just a fantastic letter, and I'd be happy to share it with anyone who's interested, from a Mr. Brian Deutsch, who is from Ridgetown College, University of Guelph, who did the calculation of gap in income support payments from government for grain and oilseed farms in Ontario versus the U.S. And he does a brilliant calculation, and his calculation essentially shows that if we gave the farmers of Canada the $66 or $63 per acre over the 4.83 million acres planted in the grains and oilseed crops, that essentially that's how the $1.5 billion number is arrived at with the 60-40 split. But that, Mr. Speaker, in fact, would only be half of the subsidy that our American friends, the American farmers would receive. So even at half, Mr. Speaker, we're not totally in the game with our American friends. But I want to continue to say to members in this House that we have to bring this debate to city people. We have to say to city people, do you want to have a food sovereign country? Do you want to have a food sovereign country? And if you do, then that, we never seem to challenge the profits of the retailers and the restaurants and the food service and hospitality in this industry. We never challenge the food processors. We never challenge those sectors because we understand the number of jobs that they create. And I would say humbly to the Minister of Finance, if you took a look at all the revenue through personal income taxes that those jobs created and those corporations created, then maybe we have to go back and maybe take a little maybe the Minister of Finance has to take a little less from the food processing, food retailing sector and distribute some of that he's taking in from those sectors and give it back to the farmers who ultimately make sure that the quality and secure supply of food in this country ultimately serves all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You have been listening to The Life of a Servant, a Dennis Mills podcast. Visit dennismills.com for more information and archived episodes of this program.